Welcome back to our second podcast / guided discussion. Today's main topics are going to be about fixed mindsets and how those can be instilled at a young age, imposter syndrome, academic validation, and overall stressors from whether it be external or internal. And even though the year is coming to an end and school is closing, finals and course selections are still lingering. So I think it's always important to talk about these pressures that may come from school.
Yeah, and before we start the actual discussion, just some questions we have you, the listener, to think about as we're speaking. So, number one, have you ever been in a situation where you didn't get something on the first try and believe you couldn't ever do it or talk down on yourself? Have you ever taken a more difficult course or AP because you thought you were expected to or wanted to have it on your resume and not because you liked the class? Have you balanced your academic workload or coping mechanisms to fight against fixed mindsets? How do you decide how to prioritize your extracurriculars into academics? What external pressures weigh on you to push harder or meet expectations, whether that be parents, peers, teachers, or even yourself? And in what ways have you felt that you didn't meet an expectation felt by those around you?
Yeah, and we just want to reiterate that we aren't experts on any of these subject matters, and we simply want to make these issues more well-known, provide some of our own experiences, and hopefully make all our listeners feel less alone with what they're dealing with.
At the end, we are definitely going to add some of what we do to cope for ourselves, and just to put that out there to see if it helps you. But of course, everyone is different. Everyone has their own strategies that work for them. It's all subjective. So great.
So to start, we wanted to talk about fixed mindsets and ultimately labels and how these pressures can influence one's mental state. So I think from starting in elementary school, labels are put upon all of us, whether it be talented, gifted in your sports or academics, even extracurriculars and your personal goals. And I feel like this can lead to students to think that you have to be one thing or the other, or a positive label versus a negative label. And ultimately that can lead to fixed mindsets, which means you may believe that you're never going to be able to grow from where you are currently, which is not true. And I think it may lead students to think that you have to be one thing or the other. You have to try harder than the other, or in reverse, you don't have to try as hard as other people. And I think this can really affect students as they enter high school or college and even the real world. I know personally, you kind of miss out on these crucial steps because you're expected to be something, or you're labeled as this, when really you have so much room to grow and you don't need to miss out on these crucial steps, and you can ask for help if you need it.
Yeah, definitely. For me, how I kind of viewed this from my life, I kind of went from a step-by-step basis and not letting myself, my brain, my emotions, grow naturally on how it's supposed to be. I was always, because of these expectations that were not only put on me by others, but also by myself, whether that could be set from media, movies, seeing how other people my age as in characters were being portrayed in movies, especially academically, stuff like that. And I always felt myself okay, I'm here, I should work to the next one, and not, instead of letting me progress linearly, if that is a word.
I also think that this fixed mindset has led to shame in my life, and feeling that if I can't get something right on the first try, or I struggle a little bit more to understand a concept than my peers, I feel as if I'm never going to be able to understand it. I know when I started driving, this is outside of academics and things, I thought, oh God, I'm never going to learn how to drive. I'm why is it so easy for other people? 6 months later, I got my license. But it's really just a matter of this fixed mindset and learning that you can grow and you will be able to learn, and you can reach out for help if you need it.
Yeah, and when you catch yourself talking down on yourself, and being stuck in those fixed mindsets, hold those thoughts and realize that you will soon understand whatever you are trying to understand. You will get over that obstacle, and you could even walk away, come back to it. You could ask others for help. Just know that you are not alone, and you could always, take a breather. You can ask for assistance. Just know that you don't have to get over this obstacle yourself, and you are not fighting a battle alone.
Yeah. So I know we talked about us a lot. So does anybody else have a situation where maybe you were trying something for the first time and you believe that you wouldn't be able to do it, or you found yourself talking down on on yourself? But if you were also in the situation, how did you maybe get out of it, or what was the end result of this situation?
This year I joined swim team at my school, and I hadn't swum since like middle school. And so after kind of like a 3-year hiatus, I was really nervous because I was like, I loved swimming when I was doing it in middle school. And then, I tried out club, and that wasn't really the best environment for me. So I was kind of nervous, like trying it out again. I was like, I know I used to love it, and I'm not really sure what's going to happen. I haven't done a sport in a while because my commitment had been to theater and student council and like all these other things. And so I hadn't really done athletics in a really long time. And I was like, I'm definitely not like prepared for this mentally or physically. And so I was really nervous going into it. And it's one of my favorite highlights of the year, if not my favorite memory of senior year. And I'm so happy I did it. It was definitely hard because, again, I was not physically in shape for swim because it'd been a long time. But I had an amazing coach, an amazing team. And I think one thing that I just realized was like, you got to take the opportunities. Like, even if I was really nervous going into it, I wouldn't change it for the world. And I'm so, so happy that I did put myself out there and try it again because I knew I loved it back in middle school. So I would just say, like, even if you're nervous about something, trying it out is all you can do, because in my opinion, I feel like you can remember that risk that you took versus like living in regret. And for me, I don't want to live with regrets. And so taking that risk and putting myself out there definitely paid off. So I'd say if anyone's struggling, trying something new, know you're not alone, and definitely take advantage of the opportunities that you're given.
Definitely. Yeah. Thank you, Logan. That was great.
Yeah, I think that really brings up a good thing about growth mindsets is that you're more willing to put yourself out there. You're more willing to take risks, and it kind of allows you to, like, when you put yourself out there, you're making yourself willing to accept failure, and not necessarily failure in a bad way, but just in a way that not everybody is going to be perfect at everything in their first try. Nobody is perfect at anything, of course. Practice makes perfect, but practice makes almost perfect. But I think that's a really good story, and it really motivates people to put yourself out there. You know that, oh, maybe even if, like you said, you're not maybe in the right shape or you haven't swum in a while, you're still going to put yourself out there and create an amazing experience for your senior year. And yeah, I think that's just a really good thing. Growth mindset, you're able to just develop your skills and put yourself out there. And I think that's a great thing.
Yeah. And especially if you feel like you're stuck on a failure or a specific thing that you didn't get or achieve that you really wanted to, don't, of course, this is easier said than done, but try not to feel too stuck on that. Try not to be, try not to, what's the right word? Like, be I hate to say like be sad, don't be sad, because that's just not ethical. Of like, of course, everyone has a right to be sad. Everyone has a right to, feel emotions over something that they really wanted but didn't get. But I guess what I'm trying to say is reflect on that. Don't beat yourself up constantly and forever because of a failure. Use that, reflect on it. And on the South Bay Families Connected website, you can see coping strategies. Like I'm reading here on stress and anxiety. You can reflect on a failure or on an anxiety and gain perspective from it. You can always use like your past experiences to grow, like Logan said, like using past experiences, using practice to make progress. It all works out.
And I also wanted to add that, failure leads to reflection, which leads to learning. And I know failure can be absolutely horrible in the moment, but once you take time to reflect and realize what you did wrong or realize what you can do differently next time, that can lead to an even better progress, like how practice makes progress.
Greatly said. Yeah. Thank you.
Is there anything else anybody wants to say about like fixed mindsets and whatnot?
So my sophomore year, I joined my school's literary magazine. After like my freshman year, I submitted like 7 different pieces, and all of them were rejected. But that's okay because I joined the next year because I wanted to like see how like the process of the literary magazine was made, and I fell in love with like learning about how it was made, especially because I considered myself like not a particular like artistic person or not someone who's like especially creative, but then I realized like art is not necessarily something that is like constrictive to one set of like things, and I learned it's more of like whatever you make of it. So like now being a senior, I'm one of the 3 editors-in-chief of the Literary Magazine, which is really exciting because now I get to like share like my love for like what I thought I was terrible at and realize that like everybody can be an artist. And it's really exciting because like I get to actually have like a hand like in making the magazine, and we just finished our like next edition and like sent it off to the printer. And like throughout the year there have been like difficulties with like working with InDesign, and especially because I don't consider myself a techie person, like making a flower, guys, big deal. I made a flower and I was so excited. So like even the little things, like if you can't think you can do the little things, those can be like one of your biggest accomplishments. So I think just taking pride and like being proud of yourself and like trying something new and even accomplishing or like making something new and just seeing what you can do is like, why not? Like, try it and see. It could probably lead you to something that you'll like you expected you wouldn't love, but like can fall completely in love with.
Thank you so much. I just remembered something as you were talking, Amanda, that I feel like I could also get vulnerable and say on the subject of fixing yourself on failures. So I'm on my school's comedy sports team, and there our school has a board position where you are in charge of the entire team. And that was a position that was really coveted. And I also really wanted it since the moment I tried out for the team when I was a freshman. I worked really hard on my presentation. I prepared a lot for my interview. I waited a month to hear the results, and I found out that I didn't get it. And that hurt a lot. I was, I was felt like knocked down. I already started doubting my abilities from the 2 years of high school I already had then. I was doubting everything I ever learned, everything I ever did. And then it definitely took time. It took a lot of, it honestly took me to like last month, almost a year, to get over that grudge. And like grudges, they could stick. It's very hard to get rid of grudges, but for me, what helped me get over my sadness over that failure is was exposure. Kind of like I still tried out for the comedy sports team. I still showed up at rehearsals. I still helped out the person who has my position currently, and I didn't feel anger, anything like that, or jealousy. I centered myself around what I loved about that activity, not about what I lost. And that made me love it even more. It kind of, I hate using this analogy, but it's kind of like a relationship. Like it's like you have a few bumps in the road, but that only makes your relationship stronger. And even though it's with a comedy improv team, it still, I had the time of my life this year doing it. So yeah.
Yeah, I think both Amanda and Aves, your guys' stories kind of show that putting yourself out there is better than not trying at all, and it ultimately led to something good, and growth can ultimately lead to healing in Aves's situation. But I also think your story also brings up a good point about imposter syndrome. After you didn't get your position, you kind of started to doubt that like your improv skills and everything you've been working for. But imposter syndrome is basically when someone in a position, a field, whether it's school, academics, career wise, someone begins to doubt their abilities based like on their surrounding environment. I know for me, being placed in like AP classes from like starting in middle school, like elevated courses, being surrounded by a group of such intellectual kids makes me doubt my own intellectual abilities, which I shouldn't do because I should be confident in myself. But just seeing all of these people who are extremely high achieving, even more so than me, it really starts to take a toll on yourself and what you think you're capable of. And it can really cause like detrimental effects to your mental health. But I think for me personally, the way that I've been able to combat with this is reminding myself that everybody is on their own path. Just because me and Becky have been in the same honors AP math class for the last 3 years doesn't mean that like I'm better than her, she's better than me. It's more so of a, she's on her own path and I'm on my own path. And even if I don't take like that AP class senior year, that doesn't make me any less intellectual or discredit any of the challenges and accomplishments that I've gone through over the last 3 years. And I think that's really important for people to know, that you don't have to take these incredibly hard courses or layer on all of these extracurriculars just for your resume in order to do what you want and pursue what makes you happy. So if anybody wants to talk on experiences of imposter syndrome or feeling this stress from surrounding peers in any aspect of your life.
I think one for me that like comes to my mind immediately is just like kind of what Amanda was saying, specific to like art and artists. For me, I think one thing that I struggle with particularly is like film, because that is something that's really important to me. Whether that's making films or watching films or acting, like whatever. And I took a class over the summer to kind of really immerse myself. It was like a 2-week production class, college level course. And I was kind of like, this is my first experience of like making my own film. And I was so excited, but then I saw people all around the world in this Zoom class who were doing the exact same thing as I was, who were applying to college for the exact same thing I was. And I was like, well, what makes me different? I have no idea, especially when you're in an environment where everyone around you wants to do it just as much as you do. It can be really, really intimidating. And I think it's also just such a competitive industry anyway. It's already hard to kind of like break your way in and make it, if you know what I mean. And then I think also just college, the idea of college for me can be really hard. Again, super exciting. There's also the part of me that's like, do I deserve to be here? Like all these other people are really smart. They also got in. Like I'm just a little tiny person and like all this craziness. But I think in some ways that can be really cool because again, all that comparison and all that energy that I spend worrying about other people, it's like you can't, like everyone's so different. It's kind of impossible to compare because you really can't compare one person's story to someone else's story because you don't know the full story. And so I would just say also to take it as a learning experience. I think sometimes I can definitely feel like threatened or intimidated by other people. And it's like, no, it should be an advantage to work together. Again, an opportunity. It's just how you look at it. And so again, that's definitely something that I'm still working on, but I think to look at it as a lot of people who are passionate about the same thing in a collaborative environment can be really, really helpful to work together.
I think you touch on that so well. Like being a big fish in a small pond and moving to college and being now a small fish in a big pond, it can be very intimidating, especially with something like film, something that I'm also passionate about. You're surrounded by all of these people with similar interests, no matter what you go to college for, what major. And obviously it's going to lead you to think that, oh, everybody else here is so much more deserving than me. But that's not true. I want to remind all of you and all of our listeners that wherever you decide to go in life, that is where you are meant to be. And of course you deserve to be there. But yeah, again, take it as a learning experience. Be proud that you get to work with these amazing people, but also know that you can't really spend your whole life comparing yourself, because if you keep doing that, you're never going to be able to learn and grow for yourself. You can use them as ways to grow, and just also remind yourself that they're on a separate part of their journey than you. Just because they know how to work a camera better than you do doesn't mean that you're not going to get to that level as well. And it's really important to know that your skills are just as valid, and everybody is on their own journey, and you are going to be able to reach that same level if you wish, just in time. Again, practice makes progress.
I am in an honors chemistry class at my school. And so, given that, I'm already surrounded by a bunch of smart people who are a lot better at math than I am. But especially when it comes to taking tests and getting our scores back, I know that everyone's immediately talking and collaborating with one another about how they did. And that puts a lot of pressure on someone because they're thinking, oh, well, if all these people got 100s and I got, say, a 70, then that automatically means that either I'm not as smart as they are, or it just kind of like, what's the word? Invalidates you in a sense, like on an academic level. But I know in order to not succumb to that, I have to just sort of remind myself that I'm in this class for a reason and I'm trying my hardest. So I'm just as good as all these other people.
Very true. And again, it's easier said than done to not compare yourself. But again, like Logan said, you don't know everybody's story. Somebody could have spent nights and nights studying for that test because they want to boost their grade. You never know. And everybody has their own struggles. And that doesn't mean that you get to invalidate any of your own accomplishments as well.
I think also with academics specifically, I was in the exact same boat. Like honors chemistry was a tough class like that. I only did it for a semester, so I applaud you for doing the whole year. But it was really rough. Like my grade was, I mean, I got a C in that class and I was like, what the heck? And I was like super embarrassed about the grade because I was like, first of all, that's not me. Second of all, I can't even imagine I'm getting a C with all these people getting A's and stuff. But I would just say that all of these things don't guarantee success, and that can be a good thing and a bad thing. So it's really just what you put into it. So I think that can be a good thing to think about when everything kind of seems like, again, the feeling like you're not enough, especially in the classroom. I know that can be really difficult.
You said how grades don't define a person. That is completely true. Like you could get an A or a D, and that says nothing about your personality or who you are as a person. And I think people start to correlate those two things, saying that like, oh, your grades mean, like if you have high grades, it means you're a good person or something. And those are absolutely not true. And that can really harm someone who's trying their best in school, and maybe just because of their grade, people are like, oh, you're a slacker or you're a try hard. So it's very difficult to keep those things separate.
As you said, Catherine, making that distinction between grades and your actual morals and who you are as a person is completely separate. I think this is all the struggles that we face at school, whether it be external factors or your friends, like the imposter syndrome. So has anybody had any external pressures that have put you into an expectation or a label, whether it be your parents, your teachers, yourself, that have made you feel you have to do something to prove your intelligence or your abilities?
You can even show us with the raise of hands, like just to know like how much all of us like have felt. Yeah, I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, 7, 8. That's all of us. Yep. All 11 of us here. Yeah, definitely. It's definitely a general thing that I feel like a lot of teens, suffer from. And then, as we close, does anyone want to share a coping strategy that they used, anything that has worked for them that they feel could possibly work for others? Anything? Of course, we already have exposure, practice, just even getting your feet wet. My psych teacher used to tell me that even if you start small, when you look back on what you started, you already feel motivated to continue because getting started is the hardest part. Once you already got started, you can see yourself the whole way through. So just to keep that in mind.
Yeah, I was going to say reflection, which I think is very important.
Yeah, and also that thing that we talked about, how like comparison is really one of the most toxic things we can do to ourselves. And I think that once, of course, it's very difficult to stop comparing ourselves to one another, because when we move to new environments, it's the first thing that we're thinking about. How do I compare to this person or that person? But I think that once we really learn to appreciate the people around us and not see them as competition or not see yourself as inferior, then you can really start to fully enjoy what you do and like truly wholeheartedly invest yourself in your activities. Um, because I remember as a freshman, I moved from a smaller middle school to a much bigger high school, and just seeing this new wave of competition of other people who were interested in things that I was interested in, it felt so intimidating, and I always felt the need to have to meet their expectation or out achieve them or do whatever and meet these sort of expectations. And that was detracting from all the time that I could have spent really enjoying the things that I wanted to do, and distracting me from the real reason that I joined these things. So I think that whatever your passion is, if you're always comparing yourself to the people who are better than you or people who are competing with you, then it's impossible for you to enjoy what you're doing.
I feel like you speak for a lot of us when you say that. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that was a really good way to close us out. Just a reminder, of course, all of these things are going to take time, and it's something that's easier said than done and a skill that has to be learned. But I just want to thank all of you for all of your input. Reminder that everyone is on their own path, so try your hardest to not let these outside pressures influence your perspective of yourself and your own skills. And of course, these things are going to take time, and it affects all aspects of your life. So most importantly, just make sure you guys are making yourself happy in a healthy way. Any other final comments?
Yeah, patience. Like, life life, as much as you don't want it to, it goes slowly. A lot of things take time. So yeah, and all of these resources, a lot of what we mentioned is on the South Bay Families Connected Teen Center if you want to browse further.
Thank you, everybody. And thank you, listeners.